Russell Westbrook as the assistant GM? Nah, Mick Cronin's got better plans, and this man may change UCLA recruiting for the near future. All for good.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, once again joined by Kris Johnson. He does those four letters, a 1995 national champ, and he's on Here District with his pops. He does just about everything. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. What we're going to dive in today, UCLA has made a very interesting new assistant GM hire, and I think that will be fun to discuss with Kris. How does that affect everything? We'll talk about what boring parts of the UCLA schedule that we know of are fun or not, and then we'll talk based on recruiting what Kris's journey looked like heading to UCLA. That's what we'll talk about today. Let's dive right into it, Kris. UCLA announced on social media today that they've hired Max Feldman as the team's AGM, assistant general manager. He's going to recruit, help with roster management. He comes from Made Hoops. UCLA has made an impactful hire. I know you believe that. I'm starting to believe it. A young man instead of Russell Westbrook. I thought that's where the Bruins are going. Why not that direction?
Well, when you talk about the profile of Max Feldman and other aspiring GMs kind of like him, these guys are pretty much prodigies, if you will, in terms of the roster management, scouting, and evaluation game. Feldman has worked at Made Hoops, where he was the director of scouting. Made Hoops runs national events from grades 6 through 12. Feldman had a direct hand in creating the recruiting profiles and databases of thousands of players that attended those events. So what this does, and what this just that, right, that gives him a grasp of, off the top of his head, the top prospects from the years of 2032 on down to 2026. I mean, this guy knowledge, this database management, this compiling data from tournaments. I talk about it like this because I actually worked in that industry for about 7 years. So I completely understand the nature of what he did and why this hire is such a good hire. So second, he's got a grasp of all the national talent in the country. If there's a 6'7" sick beast of a two-way eighth grader in Peoria, Illinois right now, yeah, our guy Max is gonna pull Mick's coat. He's going to, hey, we need to be sending him a media guide ASAP. And the earlier you get in today's college basketball recruiting landscape, the earlier you get in, the better, right? You've built a relationship from a long time. He also worked for an EYBL organization called the Nike Mean Streets, the Mean Streets. They've had everyone from D Rose to Anthony Davis, all kinds of high-level, elite, Chicago-based hoopers. For him to be tied in to Chicago's elite of the elite program, and not saying we're going to get just a bunch of Chicago guards. We had a guard from Chicago years ago named Lazarick Jones. I'm not saying we're going to get a bunch of Chicago guards, but this guy has the relationships that are built in through years of blood, sweat, and tears and grinding that eventually earns him automatic respect when he picks up the phone. So if he wants to call somebody in Michigan, in Ohio, the whole Midwest, the AAU director, he's curious about a player, we want to come see him. Coach Cronin, Coach Savino. Max is your guy. Max is going to get it done. Max is going to set it up. Third thing, worked at Priority Sports and Entertainment as an intern. Now, when you're an intern in a sports agency of the magnitude of a Priority Sports, you are like the ultimate do everything dude. You don't get paid probably anything. I don't know if it was a paid intern, but you pick up sort of this high-level, doctorate-level knowledge about the ins and outs of the sports management situation. So now you're dealing with players every single day. You're dealing with agents daily. You're probably a liaison for GMs. If there's a big pro workout, GMs are probably calling Max, NBA GMs, calling Max, hey, where's the workout? Was this logistically Max setting things up? All of these things, when you throw them into a pot, and this is only 3 things I've talked about. When you throw them into a pot, it presents a well-rounded candidate that is currently involved in today's basketball high school recruiting landscape at such a high level. Made Hoops, ran by someone that I've known for years, Chad Babel. I knew him when he was at a group called Hoop Group, which is based in New York and New Jersey. And I kind of feel like this might have something to do a little bit with Darren Savino and his relationship with Babel that goes back decades. The other thing I'd like to say too, this idea of him working for On3, which Rivals eventually bought, and like I said, building out the profiles. He's a guy that just has a total command of the situation. I love this hire. I love Mick Cronin kind of stepping outside the box. I know everybody talked about Russell, and you see it around the nation, right? You see two types of hires currently being made in the GM space in college basketball in particular. I call it one bucket, you have a celebrity hire. And I hope I don't offend the celebrities that were actually hired. So
no, offend them, Kris. Offend them.
So
let's go.
You have celebrity hires. So Shaq's at Sacramento State, Damon Lillard's at Weber State, Terrence Mann at Florida State. You know, you have these guys. Trey Young's at Oklahoma. You have these guys now that have big cachet, big names. You know, top billing. That I think were hired more for the influential side of things. So if you got the real GM and the coaches doing all the work, then you can call Shaq and, hey, I need you to get on the phone with a recruit in the 11th hour. He's thinking about going to Kansas or whatever. And Shaq calls, oh, come to Shaq State. So now it's like a whole nother thing. Trey Young could do the same thing. Everybody that I named, Damon Lillard could probably bring some guys if he gets on the phone with him to Weber State. So you have that bucket of guy that's being hired, and then you have another bucket of guy. I like to call them the grinders, guys that really be out here in these streets. Adrian Wojnarowski at St. Bonaventure, Alex Klein over at Syracuse, and now Max Feldman at UCLA. Alex Klein is an example I love to use because I used to read Alex back in the day. I think he was like 16, 17 years old. He had a website called The Recruit Scoop where he compiled a database of information nationally about players, and he was out in the streets. And then eventually got hired by the Knicks, and now Syracuse hired him as GM. But Max Feldman's trajectory might be a little bit ahead of Alex at the same time. And Alex was considered like a prodigy type of guy in this particular space. I said it on Twitter. This is a specific expertise unique to recruiting that not just everybody has, not everyone can just do. Max seems to be able to balance the data side of things with the relationship side of things and the personal side of things as far as player management and understanding how to deal with players.
The big thing is, in today's day and age, with the digital content and how you can connect so quickly with social media, the announcement videos, you can skyrocket so much quicker in that space when it comes to connects, blowing up with recruits. And with Max coming in, it's funny, Mick Cronin, what was it, just in March, Kris, that he said, I'm the GM. Now, he did float the idea, as we talked about Russell Westbrook being the assistant GM. Sure. That was never really a thing. I know he's kind of joking. He openly asked about it, but he was like, I am the GM. UCLA's already gone with the idea that the last big hire, I think, for recruiting they made was Ivo Simovic, and that was international recruiting, and then he left, and then that kind of didn't work as well after that. Right. So we bring in a youngster right now who could make things very interesting, and I'm going to ask you this question right now, Kris. What are your thoughts? Does this change UCLA's portal trajectory, and do they go with the youngsters? If you have the insight from 6th grade to 12th grade, shouldn't you just hammer home on the fabulous 5 freshmen, if you will, or whoever those best guys are, the Cooper Flags? Sure. Or does that mean they're still going to go portal like Cronin's thinking and how he's been the last couple of years?
You can go that route, but UCLA hasn't been able to. Let me watch what I say. I mean, when is the last time that UCLA was able to consistently pull in number one recruiting classes? Steve Lavin era? Was there an era in the Mick Cronin or the Steve Alford or the Ben Howland era where we had number one? I don't know. I can't answer that.
I think they've gotten some very top tier recruits and they developed, but not an overall class. I'm pretty sure
top tier recruits. What? It's kind of like on the scenario where we were talking about recruiting and what's the recruiting strategy. You got to remember, everybody's going old in college basketball. So no matter who's hired who for GM, no matter who is in that staff, teams by and large across the board are looking for older, seasoned players to help them win a national championship. So I do not think that this hire necessarily changes the formula for Mick Cronin, if you will. I still think portal heavy, identify guys that you can get. Now with Max in the building, if we can get in on 5 stars that obviously affects our formula, right? So if we're able to get in and there's some interest early and like, whoa, because of this relationship, then we might get one less guy we need to get in the portal because we have a 5-star that's going to take up that slot, or a high-level 4-star. I really don't know. I really don't want to speculate, but I do think that this guy, Max Feldman, is a value add for our recruiting for this reason. When the Compton Magic moved out of the picture, as far as being sort of the pipeline, the Southern California pipeline for UCLA and the talent, things kind of got a little murky. I wrote about it earlier in the summer. I questioned what the pivot was going to be. What was Mick Cronin going to do now that the relationship with the Compton Magic was a little different? And you saw during their July, the UCLA basketball staff, when they went out and all the offers that went out, you saw they casted a wide net. They were going for a mix of national wings and guys like that, national talent, proven national talent. There were some East Coast guys, Anderson Diaz out of the New York Rens program, went to Texas with Austin Goosley, Anthony Filazzi. I think he's over in Utah. I mean, so a couple of California guys. So that was sort of in July, kind of how, okay, the love affair with Compton Magic is dead. They left us. They're not happy with us. So what are we going to do? Boom. This is what we're going to do. We're going to throw out about 6 or 7 offers. We're going to get guys, start rebuilding pipelines, start rebuilding relationships. Savino's back on the phone, working the phones. Not saying he wasn't. I don't know what's happening, but it seems like with what we can see tangibly, what's in front of us, right? That's what happened. So now, from a recruiting perspective, you keep that same program, except now your relationships are going to be ironclad. Your ability to ID talent. That's what Max Feldman does at an early age, to be able to get in that this guy's a Cronin culture guy. We need to start talking to him right now. We need to send him the doggone media guide and whatever materials, t-shirts, hats, whatever it is, as an 8th grader. Okay, so that we can make contact and we can get in. We didn't have that before, other than the national list. Hiring Max Feldman, and this is the last thing, I'll cap this. Hiring Max Feldman is like hiring a actual scouting service, a one-man scouting service to help you identify talent and build roster.
Well, I'm going to give you an interesting angle on how this can help UCLA recruiting, both the portal and freshmen. But I'm going to tell you that next, and we'll dive a little bit into UCLA's schedule. Boring? Probably, and that's just how it's going to be for UCLA to come in years to come. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, investments, and we don't have the full picture. You can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop and your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can see all your accounts in minutes, see the clear data, the visuals, get the smart categorization of your spending. You don't need your parents yelling at you to go do something, get smart with your financials. It's not like that happens to me. Wink, wink. You can finally feel in control of your money, and you don't even have to touch a spreadsheet. I'm not even that big of a spreadsheet guy. That's where Monarch Money comes in and makes it incredibly easy for you and me to get all this done and be smarter while doing it. Don't let the financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Second segment, talking Locked On UCLA, men's hoops. We got Kris Johnson with us here. That idea that I was posing to you just a moment ago, Kris, UCLA, they got this new young kid, Max Feldman. He's a class of 22, grad at Illinois. He's young. Woo. He is not that old. I guess
my son's class is 22, so yeah.
It didn't clarify it was the undergrad. We're just going to assume it's the undergrad. That's still pretty young either way. Yeah. And as you mentioned, he's done quite a bit. He's grown up in Illinois, works well. UCLA's now in the Big Ten Conference. Here's my thought. You look so much at the freshman recruiting. You look so much at what UCLA's pivoted to in transfer recruiting. What if we think about guys who are high school freshmen and then they need to develop 2 to 3 years down the line? It's not like an 18-year-old, 17-year-old kid is fully developed. What if they need, in this older age of college basketball, an extra 2 years of seasoning? So you're like, what if this kid goes to the Big West, the Mountain West, balls out, instead of what used to be JUCO, now that's D1 college basketball, and then he's ready to transfer to UCLA. when it's time to offer him that cash that he's worth, right?
Sure.
Maybe less of a Donovan Dent situation, but probably something similar. You think that could be the new day and age?
Well, when we think about it, so okay, as far as this house settlement is concerned, this extra $22 million that I think every Division I team gets, right? Or program
they can allocate it if they want, but they're not going to use all of it probably.
So they can allocate. So you have to share it with football. I mean, I don't know how it goes, but you're going to have some more money to make some moves now, every single program across the board. So the risk of what you're talking about, kind of stash and what do they call it? Stash and draft or whatever it is, where you put a guy, you might recruit a guy heavily, say, hey, go to Big West School, go to Long Beach State for a couple of years, get some reps, this and that. What you might run into is an issue over at Long Beach State because they might try to come up with enough money. Let's say this guy balls out his first 2 years as a sophomore, he's Big West Player of the Year. Now, on one hand, he can command a lot more money from the big boys, but do we know how much money Long Beach State is going to have at their disposal and try to keep him? And now he's built a relationship with Long Beach. He's built a level of comfort. He has a proven commodity in his game, being able to get off his game. He's Big West Player of the Year. With the new house settlement, my question is like, and we got to look into this. We got to figure this out. I want to know, like, will it even the playing field or attempt to even the playing field for the mid-majors?
I guess it depends because the schools that don't have to pay for football, the Big East, they're going to spend all that money on basketball.
Like
and UConn, they have so much money. UConn can spend in both the men and the women, and I think still be just fine. Man. Dan Hurley's going to command a lot. Gino is going to command a lot. Like they could spend so much, and that's still going to be a fraction of what it is for what it costs to run a football team. Now, UConn obviously does have a football team, but you know that money's going to the men's and women's basketball teams, at least for right now. All those other Big West schools, like you mentioned, or Big East schools that you mentioned in St. John's, they're going to give that money to basketball. UCLA, as we've kind of discussed a little bit before, they're in an interesting spot as to where that money might go. But here's the thing. Where might they go if this Max Feldman kid works out and he's gone in 2 years? What if you get those super wonderkin type kids, right? Like if you're Ted Lasso, you go get home. I forget his name off the top of my head, but if you go get Homeboy, he's a genius. And if he goes to lead his own club, what if he gets to the league and he's gone in 2 years? Yeah, I know UCLA could be that stepping stone, but is that the right move to get a bunch of stepping stone kids to go to the league? Or could this be a relationship with years down the line working for UCLA?
Again, just like anything, Zach, you got to see how it goes. It's got to play out. You know, how the relationship between because our guy Max is going to be involved in a sort of in between stuff, right? So he's going to be the liaison between Mick Cronin and the coaching staff, the compliance office, and Men of Westwood, and any type of NIL situations. I think that was part of his job description. So let's see if Max is going to enjoy being in the middle of this for several years. And if he does, and if he flourishes, yes, great. He stays here 25 years and we get 10 number one recruiting classes in that time period, then beautiful. But if he does bounce to the NBA, I mean, I think that we're all adults here. We know that, the kid like this that has a ton of talent is obviously has a ton of initiative because he's really went out and made this type of thing happen. I hadn't heard of him. I don't know how he got an interview or what he did, but he wasn't on everybody's short list of guys that people were targeting for GM. So that tells me that he made this happen. So if he made this happen, then he's definitely going to try to make it happen in the league. But I don't think Mick Cronin is tripping in that sense of like, hey, man, I don't want you to use this as a stepping stone. I don't think Mick's that kind of guy. I think
he gets it. Mick gets it.
He wants to get a value out the guy while he's here. I think he understands. This guy's 26. He's on a trajectory that's even at the similar stage is of Alex Klein, who is like been in the NBA, was a Knicks scout at a young age, right? And then ended up being I keep bringing up Alex, but he's just so impressive. Ended up being the GM for the Syracuse Orange Men or whatever, Orange. And so like he's on maybe like a similar trajectory. So NBA wouldn't be out of the question in 2 or 3 years for Maxwell.
And that's what we saw with Ivo Simovic. He came, he's supposed to be the international director of recruiting, the new pipeline for UCLA because they didn't have NIL and they go to the league.
Well, what happened? You know what happened? Shoot, Fible, Vide, Yuchtenchel, they didn't turn out to be the guys that they kind of thought they were going to be. And so, I felt like Evo pivoted because I think he went back to Toronto or Phoenix, one of them two.
I think he went to the Raptor staff. He got hired at the NBA, and they
in
still
the
hired a
league.
director of international recruiting to replace Evo. But clearly, that hasn't been the case now that Adai's gone. They're pretty much all gone. The question is, do you think UCLA will get more value out of Max, whether that be 1 to 10 years, than what they got out of Evo in his year plus at UCLA?
Great question. So what Evo did help us get was Adai, right? And Berkey actually was a hooper too.
And he's in Nebraska, so it's not.
I don't want to hate on. I don't want to hate on Berkey too much because I was a Berkey guy, but Adai, right? So yes, my answer is yes. Yes, we will get more out of Max Feldman than we got out of Evo in terms of recruiting. Max Feldman has the relationships, the current modern day relationships. His fingers on the pulse of grassroots basketball. Made Hoops is one of the biggest premier organizations in grassroots basketball. Coming from Made Hoops stock, your relationships are solid. It's still impressive. They're an influencer in this game. That's who type of people you got to surround yourself with. People that got juice. Okay, Max Feldman has juice, a very specific set style of juice in a specific subset of recruiting, to where he's going to be able, like I said, he's going to be able to identify off the top of his head the top 20, looking out the top 20 32s. Like, Mick, you need to get with this guy. Mick, this guy. The events, the knowledge of the events, the knowledge of the type of players that show up at events. So he has like a really specific set of skills that I think will turn immediate return on investment for Mick Cronin and UCLA men's basketball.
Speaking of juice, speaking of return on investment, we're going to talk briefly about this, but it's very important, and we have touched on it before, and I think it's always fun to poke fun at it. Return on investment. Get a good game in Pauley Pavilion. Get a good game. I know we talked about UCLA's schedule, but you see all these schools dropping out their schedules. You get the recruits out there. Sometimes people bring basketball recruits. Look at our football atmosphere. This is what you can enjoy before basketball season kicks off. Or come look at our big-time game against Kansas in Pauley Pavilion, although Kansas would never come to Pauley Pavilion nowadays. Like, imagine those types of things. You see all these schools putting out the fun games. Who is that, one team or two that we would want UCLA to play to bring these recruits out? Who do you think Max Feldman could bring a recruit out to come watch UCLA play in Pauley Pavilion that would get the arena energized? That's not just a basic Arizona. That's not your West Coast school. Go further east than Texas. Who would that school be?
Oh, man, you got to go big boys. You got to go blue bloods. I mean, you got to try to Duke. North Carolina, Duke. How about Duke? Kentucky.
I think Duke, you could get Duke. With John Shire in
Kentucky.
charge, I think you could get Duke.
So Duke, Kentucky, who not too long ago we did play about 10 years ago at UCLA, I believe. It was 2000? No, I don't remember. God, what am I talking about?
But no, they did play Kentucky. They got a home and home.
At home, right? At home,
that was
right?
Lonzo Ball. That was back-to-back years when Kentucky was number one or close to, and they beat them twice.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, we need those games that will electrify Pauley Pavilion again. That will, as I used to call them when we played, that make the walls sweat. When we standing room only, capacity crowd, and we had literally every top recruit that was in high school was at our home games. I mean, the atmosphere. I think that this year's non-conference schedule, though, is pretty, it's kind of ambitious. When you have Arizona, you have Gonzaga in Seattle, I believe, and you have I think Arizona State is locked in for this season as well.
Yeah.
But dude, like, being in the Big Ten, it's one of those things, man, where you're going to have so many opportunities with so many quality games. Like, I'm not sure from Mick Cronin's perspective, how many games, high-level games like you're talking about, do you really want to play during the course of
at least one at home?
Fall,
I mean, Arizona State's not going to do it for me, Chris. I mean, I love ASU. They should be in the conference, but it's not going to do it for me.
I hear you, but you got to think about it how Mick's thinking about it. So ASU isn't a glamour matchup, but it's a probable win. He, probable win. So that's for whatever conference tournament, whatever RPI. I don't even know if they use the net. Whatever it is, right? So they're using it for that. But my thing is, like, do you want to play like 3 big time high level matchups and potentially losing all 3, screwing up your net, screwing up stuff for later on? I think this comes into play. I don't know. I don't think the idea and the attitude of let's play all the big boys and let's get as many big boys as we can on the schedule. I don't think that necessarily exists at UCLA right now, because of our coach might not feel like, he has the whip to do it. But this year, if any year, I think we've scheduled pretty ambitiously. Last year, we played some big dogs too in non-conference. We had a pretty solid non-conference schedule. Lost to New Mexico, but lost to North Carolina. But it was like we were playing some decent teams. So I'm not sure. I don't have the answer on that, man. But I would love to see it. Make no mistake.
Yeah, we love to be at Pauley Pavilion seeing something that, I understand you have to get. If you think about it, in a football schedule, they play 10 to 12 games. You get some schools play one FCS, and UCLA recently barely did that because of stupid Michigan, and they backed out of that contract. Stupid Michigan. We'll say that again. Then you've got basketball. You triple the schedule, right? You get to 33 games. Obviously, the FCS, mid-majors in this case, you triple that. So you have to get 3 to 4 games. It's just watching them play 5 to 6 of those at home. I know the schedule's not officially released, and maybe I'll have to eat my crow when it's official, or maybe people who know more than I do will have, a bigger idea. The schedule's not out to my knowledge at this very moment, but what I've seen, a true home game does not against ASU just doesn't do it for me. I know Arizona's fun. And that, at least that they get them in LA, so the fans better show up at the Intuit Dome.
We play Cal in San Francisco.
In San Francisco, that is good, but get that in Berkeley. Come on, let's go to Berkeley. I know we get to go to Tempe in the next year. Let's go to Tucson. Let's go have some fun.
I do. Remember we were talking last week about how playing in those big venues was going to be the move now, just because of the money earning opportunity. Like, people are going to turn down Harmon Arena for the Chase Center or wherever you go, right? If you go to St. Louis, like, you're going to play in the big deal. If you go to Kansas City, you're playing in the, whatever that is. My thing with this is, like, schedule a nice balance of competitive yet winnable games. Like, I wouldn't go too far on the, hey, I want to play Duke, Kansas, and Kentucky, unless I had a bunch of dudes that I knew could potentially beat them. That's the only time that I would try to schedule this ambitiously, is kind of what you're suggesting.
The only other thing, to make your point even greater, you think about money and travel and the financials, it's a little easier to access airports and travel to the NBA arenas because they've kind of had to build around that versus these remote college towns, right? Tucson's great, but, going to Tucson versus San Francisco or going to Vegas or to Phoenix, a little easier.
And a lot of coaches ain't trying to give up that major home court advantage. Let's give it the kind of the ambiguous home court advantage. Okay, we're out here at the Chase Center where, a ton of UCLA folks can come through. Tickets will be available. Okay, that's the other thing about going into these, Allen Fieldhouse. Tickets ain't that available. You're gonna be up in the rafters with Fog Allen.
$170 just to look at an ant.
So where would you rather do it? Would you rather go to the T-Mobile in Vegas, or are you trying to go to UNLV, like, the Thomas and Mack, and be all crunched up? I guess it's.
Thomas and Mack is spacious. I went there in the summer for summer league.
Yeah, it's spacious. It's spacious, but if you're talking about a sellout, you're talking about 6,000. Is it really worth it? Or 10,000, 12,000? Is it worth it versus 23, 24, or 19, whatever it is? 6,000 more tickets. So I think that money and financials really come into play, especially nowadays, Zach, when you got to pay salaries. Like, you have to make money. You have to earn. When your athletic department, was in a deficit for so long and all that, like, if you're UCLA, they're trying to get Intuit Dome. They up in Seattle. They doing San Francisco. You know what I mean? It's like this big games that have the potential to earn as well as help us out for the tournament.
Well, you shared a lot of your ideas, but let's dive into 17, 18-year-olds, young Kris Johnson, you're recruiting. We talk about a new focus person on recruiting in Max Feldman. Could this guy have been the liaison to get you to UCLA? Obviously, you had the familial connection. Let's talk about that next, your recruitment to UCLA. So I saw this the other day, Kris. I think it was your dad talking about, I forget what pod it was. You can remind me in just a moment about the kind of mic drop moment John Wooden did to get him to go to UCLA. It was the fact that he was like, I think he was at home. He said he was at home watching the championship and the Memphis State game.
Yeah,
and then all of a sudden, 2 seconds after the game's over, hey, why don't you come play at UCLA? That was the legendary John Wooden after a championship game, focusing on next year, if you will. Did you have that mic drop moment at UCLA in that recruitment like that?
Oh man, I have to share the story that I have about Coach Wooden, which is my mic drop Coach Wooden moment. I didn't have one necessarily for recruiting, but you're going to get my drift. It was the morning of my, I think, the Southern California Regional Championship game, my senior year. We're playing against Mater Dei. It's at the Anaheim Pond. When the pond, I don't know if you know what the Honda Center is in Anaheim. It used to be called the Pond, right? So it was like this cool new place. So anyway, we played out there. We're having a game. It's the morning of the game. I'm eating breakfast. My dad brings the phone, says, "Hey, somebody wants to talk to you." I get on the phone. It's Coach Wooden. Coach Wooden, "Hey, Kris, I just want you to tell you have a great game today. Be aggressive. Be a champion. This and that, this and that." And he just had some words of just kind of an encouragement, if you will, motivation for me before that game. And I think that was like, it didn't really take any coach from UCLA to ever have to try to sell me on UCLA after that type of stuff. I was pretty much smitten with the idea of going to UCLA my entire life. So the recruiting part, I was probably the easiest recruit in UCLA history. You really didn't have to do much with me. I was a done deal. I had been coming up to campus since I was about 11 years old, as far as consistently going to the Wooden Center, going to the Men's Gym. So I was very familiar with everything up there. And it was it was one of the places that I truly felt like it was home, like a home feeling where you just know people and you just feel safe. That's what UCLA represented for me. I did take other visits. I visited Arizona State. I visited Washington State. I visited Louisville.
Is that why you like the Arizona State home game? Because you're like, they got facilities.
Well, I like Arizona State because it's a very spirited game when we play them, because they got a bunch of dudes that think they tough. And so I like playing Arizona State because of the nature of the game. I think it brings out the best in our toughness, because we've been blasting them. We've been getting with them, but they thought they were tough. So I like those type of, I like Bobby Hurley versus Mick Cronin. I just want to watch those two on the sideline. I just want to watch those two. I don't care about the game. I want to watch those two and how they react to stuff on the sideline. But what I was telling you, I took those visits. I went down to Duke, sat in Coach K's office. Coach K told me he was recruiting another guy named Mike Maddox, and so I was like, wasn't a priority, but he really liked my game and this and that. So I was like, okay, Coach, why did I come down? Why did you bring me down for a visit? Whatever. But at the end of the day, Zach, it was just going to be about UCLA. If someone like Max Feldman was in the picture at UCLA, it would have just added to it. Somebody that could speak my language, someone that was young as a high school player. I'm looking at someone on staff that's young. You got to remember and understand, like, we live in one of the most like kind of ageist generations in world history. So it's really a stark contrast between people that are old and people that are young. And so when you bring a young person on staff, you make the young people in your organization feel a lot more comfortable. When there isn't a young guy in a position of power in a staff, it's a little strange, right? But now you got somebody there. There's going to be a level of comfort there, and because this guy can speak the player's language.
It's interesting. How much do you think that would have swayed your decision? Say ASU had this young and up and coming Max versus UCLA's legacy. They got the Coach Wooden call.
Yeah.
Could there have been anything that Max could have done? Insert any logo, any university, any team, but he's that young and coming. He's got the right words. He's somehow drummed up the right NIL or whatever that could have been. Obviously, a little different mid-90s to now. Could that have swayed you?
Let's say I didn't have the connection to UCLA. I was just somebody that everybody was trying to recruit, a top 50 player like I wasn't in high school. No connection. And let's say a school had a Max there, right? And I'm looking at a school like a UCLA who has Coach Wooden. Okay, Coach Wooden, it's a little older. The tradition, right? Because at the time, UCLA hadn't won a national championship in 18 or so years. The recent national champions were Duke, UNLV back in those days. And then 93 at North Carolina, then 94 Arkansas. And so those were kind of, let's say any one of those schools came at me and was talking about something, I would have went. You didn't need a GM because back in the day, the coaches were the stars of the program. Not unlike today where the coaches still kind of run it, but it was just coaches were larger than life back in the 90s, in the 80s. Okay. Larger than life, like legends that I still to this day, I get chills thinking about some of these coaches because that's how the media built them up to be. And that was the power dynamics that was associated with the NCAA back then. You had to listen to everything coach said and did. And your coach was your father figure. He was your GM. He was everything. So for me, I don't know. I think I would have been sold on the coach. If I had John Thompson, Georgetown coming in talking to me, or, Eddie Ludosin or somebody like that, and I didn't have my UCLA connection. Yeah. I mean, I think, they would sway my decision pretty easily.
And then final question, you talk about the youth of the staff. You've got Nate Georgeton, who is a 2019 Cincinnati grad, so pretty young. He's an assistant coach. He's worked his way up in Mick Cronin's UCLA ladder. You've got Dave Singleton. You've got Max Feldman. All of a sudden, you're compiling a young staff, and if I'm forgetting, it's because now they've had a lot more youth on the staff. What do you think about the youth of UCLA staff?
Well, I think when you have a good mix of old and young, and obviously Mick, Darren Savino, Rod Palmer, those are the old guys on the staff. They're all in their 50s. But when you bring in a young crew, grinders, you get the push-pull, right? So the young people push the old people, and the old people can pull along the young people. Now there's a two-way mentoring going on where the young people now add a level of energy, newness, easier ways to do things. Maybe technology at times does come into play that helps streamline certain processes that are kind of archaic in the recruiting side of things. But I also think that the most of all, the language and tapping in. So older coaches aren't really savvy with social. Younger coaches are savvy. Younger Max is savvy. So now, boom, people that are recruits see a younger member of the staff maybe saying something on social media. It goes much further than if it was Mick Cronin or Darren Savino. You got to look at the dichotomy between old and young on the staff. Like, this is the cool kids, and when we got to really calm down and take care of it. So when you're with us, and I'm not saying it's exactly like this, but it's sort of the feeling, right? When you're with the young people, you're feeling good about everything. We're hanging, dad's not around, right? Mom, dad, they aren't around. So you behave sort of like that. You have you let your hair down a little bit, but dad comes around. Okay, everybody's tightening up, everybody's locked in. And I think that dynamic is actually good for a basketball program. It keeps the old guys wanting to sort of tap in with the young energy, and the young guys get to respect and tap into the old energy when it comes to responsibilities and doing things the right way. So I love it. I love the hires. I was going to talk about the Davis. So UCLA this summer, Mick Cronin, two underrated moves, right? Max Feldman is going to add value to the recruiting process and the roster management process in modern day college basketball. David Singleton is going to add tremendous value from a standpoint of he is an experienced player. He has high-level championship experience. He's cut from the Mick Cronin cloth, so he understands the culture, the language, and how to approach it. He understands how to excel playing for Mick Cronin. David also high-level communicator, played in the G League. I believe he was like vice president of the G League Players Association or something like that. Something like that. We got to Google it. But he was doing something using his UCLA education and his affable skills as a communicator to do something at a professional level. So now you bring that to UCLA, and I haven't even mentioned shooting. So now you bring that to UCLA. David now, along with Max, young blood, young energy. David's bringing the shooting nuances as well on court. Man, this has the potential to be like, I hate to say a perfect mixture, but it's the right mixture for a championship level organization.
It's funny because it is turning into, even in college sports, it is an organization. And the funny thing is, at the athletics level, each team is like a small part of a whole. And it's like, this is an organization. This is a little mini organization.
Yep.
They're not like exactly minor league teams to a major league team, if you think about it from Major League Baseball's perspective. Right. But it is kind of interesting if you think about it that way, that, they're all pieces. But UCLA is a big, very big piece of the puzzle when it comes to UCLA athletics. But that's going to do it for us here today. Kris, thank you for your time. As always, got to keep having you on, man.
No, for sure, man. Thank you. Appreciate
All
you,
right.
Zach.
We're going to get those hands up. 8 clap time. We got those hands up. I don't know if I lost you, but we got those hands up. All right, we're going to try it. All right, here we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight. There we go.
I always screw it up. There I am. I always screw it up. I'm sorry.
It's all good. It was fun doing that blind. Man. I think we lost you for it sounded fine, and then it was like funny trying to do that blind. That is
my
fun.
screen went off. I apologize.
It's all good. That was fun. We'll make sure to screenshot that, and we'll post that on like the YouTube as like the thumbnail.
That'd be dope.
That'd be funny. Just a frozen face though. There we go. That is Kris. I am Zach. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.